Skills we've looked at this week will be a part of your homework and quizzes for the rest of this quarter. The idea is to give you weeks of practice. So one way to do things would be for me to give you 50 questions on one worksheet, which of course is just ridiculous. Nobody's going to want to do a 50 question worksheet of the same thing. But if over the course of 50 days we do one problem per day, there is your practice, and you actually get the real practice, because you really don't learn something until you forget it, then relearn it, then forget it, then relearn it, and then you do that a few times, and eventually you just don't forget it. So just kind of keep that in mind. I want it to become more natural for you. So today we're going to wrap up our fundamental skills of the quarter with renaming fractions. So I will use a calculator to convert each fraction into a decimal like we did with percentages, just to show you something about these fractions. So 3/4, 9/12, 21/28. 3 different fractions, right? Let's see. 3 divided by 4 is 0.75. 9 divided by 12 is 0.75. 21 divided by 28, you see a pattern here, is 0.75. So are these 3 fractions different? No, they're the same fraction, because value-wise, this is worth 75%, 75%, 75%. So again, the key thing there is to recognize that these are the same. All right. So we should notice again that 3/4 is reduced when we look at that one. In algebra, we call it simplified. You could say reduced, but simplified is the better word. It means that we cannot divide the numerator and denominator by anything at all, the same value-wise. The only thing I can divide 3 and 4 by at the same time is 1, which means we don't look at that. But what about the second fraction? Well, what we're looking at here is 9/12, which if you look at 9 and 12, both of those can be divided by 3. 9 divided by 3 turns into 3. 12 divided by 3 turns into 4, which means when you divide both of these by 3, 9 divided by 3 is 3, 12 divided by 3 is 4. And notice it is the same as your 3/4 there. Third fraction works the same way. When you learn your math skills, you're going to notice that 21 and 28 can both be divided by 7. 21 divided by 7 is 3. 28 divided by 7 is 4. So again, if I were to divide both of these by 7, 21 divided by 7, 3. 28 divided by 7, 4. It's still 3/4. So what we're looking at here is we're not going to look at simplifying a fraction, because, I mean, that's one of those skills that you have to kind of get over time. It's really, you don't learn to simplify a fraction until you learn your math facts, which is hopefully what we're working on this quarter, but I'm not going to have you do that. When we rename a fraction, we're simply going the opposite direction. So instead of simplifying by division, we'll rename the fraction using multiplication. So good news is we get the multiplication tricks back in. The trick in understanding that we must multiply the numerator and denominator by the same value. So let's look at the process. And again, be sure to ask about any issues you're having with understanding. So what you're going to see on your work is I'm going to give you a fraction, and I'm going to tell you what I want the bottom number to be. So in other words, I have 4 7s. I want it to equal something over 35. The trick to this is figuring out what I'm doing to make 7 into 35. Well, if I'm multiplying 7 by something to be 35, I can figure out what it is by doing 35 divided by 7. So that's what I'm going to do. 35 divided by 7 is 5, which means I want to multiply this by 5. 4 times 5 is 20. And that should be my answer. Let's see. If I want to check it, I could do 4 divided by 7. Yep, I do 20 divided by 35. And even though it doesn't look like it, 0.5714 for 4 divided by 7. I'm sorry, I don't have the right calculator. 0.5714, so I'm not going to do that because this calculator is not the type I need. But it is the same, and that's really what you're looking at. 7 times 5, 35. 4 times 5, 20. That would be your renamed fraction right there. Rename 3/5 to have a denominator of 20. So 3 over 5 equals something over 20. The first thing you have to do is figure out what you're multiplying 5 by to make it 20. So what we're going to do is 20 divided by 5, which is 4. Hopefully over time you don't need the calculator, but for right now that's fine. That means I'm going to multiply this by 4. 3, 6, 9, 12 should be my number. 12 is my renamed fraction in that problem. All right. So again, make sure you're asking questions when you have them, because I am going through this as if you've seen it before, because you have seen it before. Whether or not you paid attention or learned it, something different, but you have seen this all before. 5 6 equals something over 48, because remember I want the denominator of 48. So 5 6 equals something over 48. First I have to find out what's missing, and the way I do that is by dividing. So 48 divided by 6 is 8, which means I want to multiply the top number by 8. 5 times 8 is 40. So 40 over 48 would be my renamed fraction. And then the last example I'm going to show you today, rename 1/4 to have a denominator of 24. So 1/4 equals something over 24. The first thing I want to do is try to find out what's missing. So I do 24 divided by 4, which is 6. 1 times 6 is 6. That is your fraction. All right. So now let's take a moment to practice this skill on a worksheet again. Remember, you have a quiz on every other skill. Over every skill that was covered this week tomorrow. It's important that you ask any questions over the material that you are still unsure of doing. Otherwise, as I said, the contract in high school is that if you don't ask any questions, then you're saying you understand it all, which means you can no longer blame the teacher for not teaching. If you haven't asked me one question this week and you don't do well on this test or quiz tomorrow, it's because you didn't ask me one question this week, and you want to make sure you start doing that, because that's what we get paid to deal with. So outside of that, let's get to work and let's see what happens.